Eric Red, former high school and college track athlete in the 800 meters, did a variety of jobs. Law enforcement, radio producer, letter carrier, all before entering the personal training, strength training field in 2001. He's certified through various associations over the years, most notably Z Health, NCEP, RKC, and RPR. He currently trains clients at Evolution 180, a gym he co-founded and opened in 2008. He works primarily with general populations clients, mostly baby boomer aged, and basketball athletes of all levels. His mottos are, everyone is an athlete, and dead clients don't pay. First of all, Eric, I want to say thank you for allowing us to take your time, which I know is extremely valuable to share this information about something that we've all done our entire lives, but something that you've been coaching since 2001, which is movement.
Yeah,
So,
man.
so without further ado, I'd like to ask the first question, which is, how do you view movement?
Movement, athletic movement, movement in general.
General and then athletic.
Okay, so and actually it's kind of tricky because they're kind of one and the same. I look at it as I looked at it through a couple different ways. We have obviously the biomechanical portions of it, but one thing that we have to keep in mind, there are neural components to it as well, and they both matter as far as us moving well, us moving safely, cleanly, and without getting too hung up on the things that we want and need to do. Not only the things that we want to do is like play sports and stuff like that, but also our day-to-day activities, particularly walking and stuff like that.
So, could you go into some of the components that you analyze when you have a client come in and maybe their gait is a certain way, like just the different areas, like maybe vision and balance and how those contribute to our overall movement.
Okay, so yeah, so well, you just already kind of mentioned gait. When I have someone come in, that is generally one of the first things that I will take a look at because obviously that's something that we do a lot, probably, hopefully, more than anything else is walking and running and other activities. So the gait will tell you a lot based on how smooth it is, how comfortable the person is when they are walking, and any stiffnesses and tightnesses and you know dysfunctional movement areas usually pretty much jump out in the gait. So it's a moving assessment. It's one thing to have someone do stuff and they're not moving. You're looking at their posture, or maybe you're having them squat. A lot of movements have a lot of assessments have a lot of different type of pieces to it. But gait is a way to really get a fast feedback on what the person you're working with is doing.
I know you've spent time with people from different backgrounds and areas of the world, and you've watched a lot of different people move. Um, so why do you think we move so poorly in the West?
Oh, yeah. Well, okay. So I'm going to jump ahead to something that's called the SAID principle, and I know it's something that you're familiar with. And I think a lot of coaches and people are familiar with what it is, but it's a specific adaptation to imposed demands is pretty much what it does. What it says is that we get good at what it is we do. And as we become more and more sedentary, well, guess what? We get good at being sedentary. So, uh, you know, people that move a lot and that move through work or through activities are going to be better at it than people that don't move as much. And we're moving less and less. We're, becoming more computer based, and uh, these phones are computers, and so we don't really have to move a lot of, 50, 60 years ago, we played more. Our jobs were more outside. Our jobs were more labor intensive. So that's a large amount of the reason. I'd say that's most of it right there.
Could you speak more on um, that thing you just alluded to, that we played more back then? Like, what did the play look like? And also, like, how was it incorporated in the day of the average worker?
Well, we can talk about workers, or we can talk about, for instance, kids.
Mm.
And if you think about kids growing up, they were not, there wasn't a whole lot of TV, there wasn't a whole lot of screen time. But what there was tag and, you know, playing catch and chasing each other around, wrestling, tussling, PE at everywhere had PE. And, I think everybody didn't think about it. It wasn't a thing. It wasn't considered exercise. It was just considered what was done. And we use it. Parents used it my parents used it to babysit us. I mean, okay, you guys go outside and play during the summer. And, in a couple hours, 3 hours from now, I'm coming in, wash your hands. We'll do lunch. Lunch is over. I'm looking for my friends. I want to get out there and get at it again. And what it looked like was all sorts of stuff, man. Uh, Baseball, uh, football, catch, basketball. For baseball stuff, we played a game called Over the Line. For basketball, there was always horse and various components of the game. But really, it's not like everyone was trying to play at a school or on a team. It's just what everybody did. We burned off a lot of energy. We moved around. We played. We kicked the ball around. We played dodgeball, just all sorts of different stuff. Jump rope, hopscotch. I had sisters, hula hoop. It just was endless. The choices were just a lot of different things. So, play wise, that's what was at our disposal. But work wise, I mean, there's a time when there were a lot of different labor jobs and building stuff, and you had a lot of farm work, and everyone like worked in their garden. If they had a house, they had their garden, they worked on it. They pretty much did their own flowers. Maybe they had someone to do the lawn, maybe they did it themselves. I remember pushing a push mower every Saturday, even though I hated it. I try to figure out ways to get my friends to help me, kind of trick them Tom Sawyer style, and
Mhm.
all various kinds of things like that. So that really led to pretty good movement skills. And, that's a lot of the stuff that's taken away right now for various reasons.
I think it's so interesting that everybody talks about the blue zones. There's a
Hmm.
Netflix series released about the blue zones, and
Right.
what they do in the blue zones is exactly what you just described.
Oh yeah.
They their lives are set up to move.
Hmm.
And you also mentioned that young kids moved and played tag and reacted and fell and learned how to do all these different movement skills. What do you notice in the young kids you train today? Is there a lack of that? And like, what type of skill set are they missing by focusing on training so much and not playing as much?
So, I don't want to, like, there's a saying about, cutting off my nose to spite my face, because clearly I train a lot of kids
Yeah.
for sports. And, that's not something that was even a thing when I was a kid. I mean, when I say train, I mean, there was not a lot of gym time. It was still seasonal sports. Yeah, there was coaching. There was a guy that, so I ran track. I lifted a little weights. We played around with some weights, but I remember track practice. I remember sometimes we wouldn't practice. We'd play football, or we couldn't. Practice went in early. Then whoever knew how to play football, we'd all line the girls too. We'd all line up and play football after track practice, or for really after cross country practice. I remember everybody from the cross country team. I ran cross country. We all went over and played on the soccer team. Half of us didn't know what we were doing, but we just ran around and made things tough for people who weren't in as good a shape. So
Maybe let me rephrase that because I don't like how that sounded now that I'm playing it back in my head right now.
yeah.
It had a weird connotation, and I know you. So, um, how does play build a foundation for an athlete?
Hmm.
Because like one of the mottos you said, everybody is an athlete.
Hmm.
Um, in which they can stack whatever it is they want to specialize in. So what does that base layer do for somebody, basically?
Okay, so the base layer is the more movements that you work at, is the better movement vocabulary you're going to have. Okay. And that movement vocabulary is something that you want to develop when you're young. There's certain parts of it that are going to be harder to get good at as you get older. When you're young, you're kind of carefree, you're kind of reckless. You may not move, it may not be pristine, but what it is, it's just sloppy, kind of fun. And over time, you figure out how to move better, now how to get faster than this guy, laterally, straight ahead, backwards. So all of those things all come into play. And the better you are at those, is the better you're able to adapt to maybe an organized sports and organized movement as you move forward. But having those basic movement skills, things that you develop when you're young, those are the things that you really just get through by playing on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident at the top of the NFL. Pat Mahomes played baseball and football his entire life, and the angles he's able to create when he um, gets caught by a defensive lineman to get around him, he's doing baseball throws, but since he has that background, he can do that in a safe manner.
Well, not only is it in a safe manner, but he doesn't even have to. I mean, he doesn't even have to think about it, overly think about it. He's done it many times. So it just, it comes out, you look at him and it just, boom, it just jumps out there.
So we talked about play for kids and we talked
Mhm.
about play for workers. Um, and we also talked about the blue zones.
Yeah.
But what can we take from the blue zones, like some low-hanging fruit, and maybe someone works at a desk for multiple hours a day, but they want to reap some of the benefits of what you just described. How could they incorporate what they do in the blue zones in their own lives in a
Well, yeah,
actionable way?
they could start off just by, I mean, gardening is a huge thing. That's something that's quite popular in some various blue zone cultures. Just start off by finding stuff at your own, if you have a yard, or if you have a community that, a community yard, a community growth place, just start off by getting your hands in the soil and moving around and, doing some planting and some pruning and some cutting and stuff like that. That's one thing that they definitely do. Groups, they have really strong groups, and meaning that, loners don't last as long. People that have support systems and friends and acquaintances and things that they do as a group, that's another one of those big big pieces that that the blues owners have, that apparently is conducive to long, healthy, and happy lives.
What about the feet? Because the feet is a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and also I got
Oh
this
yeah,
hat on,
yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
just the footwear we have in today's day and age, which
Mhm.
could also be a contributor to, I'm not going to say it's direct, but it definitely is a contributor to knee, hip, low back, all sorts of movement dysfunctions.
Yeah,
So
for sure, for
yeah,
sure.
so could you speak on that?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So one of the quotes that always sticks with me is the smarter the shoe, the dumber the foot, which means if the more work that your shoe does for you is the less work that your feet have to do for themselves. And we got these shoes nowadays, and they look good, but we're squeezing our feet, and we're taking away the ability of our feet to wave. The toes can't spread out, and so you end up with pretty weak, dysfunctional feet. And over time, I mean, you can just look around. People are getting more and more foot maladies, bunions and hammer toe, and all these sorts of ailments. And these things are, some of them are really, we're setting ourselves up by, um, you know, doing it to ourselves with our shoes and with our lack of movement
Mhm.
and our lack of really healthy movement from the foot up the chain.
There's a nursing home by me, and I guess PT schools, they really want their applicants to have a wide breadth of experience.
Uh-huh.
It makes them more attractive to the admissions people.
Sure.
But I know I want to do something with the feet and the hands, so I was actually want to talk to you about that maybe after this. But
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
could
Uh-huh.
you talk about the feet being a contributor to falls? Because I know that's huge in older populations, falling
Yeah.
and fractures and longer healing times.
Yeah. Falls are, yeah, major. So if you think about your feet over time, you think about the sensitivity of the feet, and the better you can feel the environment around you, the better you can stay upright, and the safer you can keep yourself. And that doesn't mean you got to walk around barefoot, but what it does mean is sometimes you got to be barefoot, and you can't rely on your shoes stiffness to do everything for you. So if you take feet that are like, I mean, to me they kind of remind me, I'll say sometimes like paddles, and you literally see people that walk, and their foot is just like a oar. It's just flop, flop, flop.
Yeah.
And a really good foot will have feet, toes that can that can curve and extend and flex and find things and feel things, and you know what step it is that you're going to, and if you kind of misstep, you've got the wherewithal to kind of roll on your ankle a little bit or find some different part of the foot to help stabilize you. So there's a lot of stability that is down there. Now it's not all down there, but having feet that are mobile and strong is, for older people, And for anybody, a first line of defense to staying upright. And another thing, if you notice, like as people get older and older, the shoes get stiffer and stiffer, and to the point, they're looking like they just took blocks and just put your feet in some big blocks. So um, that's a thing where you really want to keep those feet healthy. But you have to know it's a thing. If you don't know
Yeah.
it, I mean, I know a lot of ladies, they wear high heels, they wear certain sort of shoes. I know a lot of people that, oh yeah, these are great shoes. Oh wow, man, I got some really good shoes. They're really stiff. They're giving me great support. You've got to know that you have to know it's a thing. And you got to know that sometimes you got to get your shoes off. You got to roll your feet. You got to get your fingers in between your toes. You got to wiggle your feet around. You got to curve your feet. You got to extend your feet, flex them, extend them. You got to wiggle them around. You want to feel, you want to be able to touch your toe and know that you're touching your toe. You want to be able to maybe put something on the ground, a few things, and try and identify what they are as you touch them with your feet. And a lot of neural activity, a lot of brain activity is associated with all those joints that are in your feet. So it's a big deal. If you want a good, healthy, safe existence, it does matter to massage and stay with feet that don't end up being stiff and like I say, like paddles. Also, as an athlete, you're creating force. That's where your force is coming from. Boom. Your ability to move and hop and push and jump and accelerate is right there right there from the feet, the relationship with the ground. The better those feet can get into the ground, whether moving laterally, backwards, or straight ahead, there's a lot of good, amount of power that's leaking and strength that's leaking through those ankles and feet, not really being engaged the way that they could be if they were made a higher priority and strengthened the way some other body parts are worked on and strengthened.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
do think people are becoming more and more aware of, aware of the necessity to do this, but it's kind of a strange thing. On one hand, you see shoes that are becoming uh, a lot more thin and great for foot strength, and they're breaking them down and they're not so thick and bulky. And on the other hand, you got just doubling and tripling down on these giant like pillows, like people walking on these pillows. They go, oh wow, my feet feel great. Oh man, I just got these, whatever they are. And I look at it and go, geez, you basically could get pillows. And now I want to give you some exercises to have you really use your feet. And you can't even really feel the ground. You're feeling the cushion of the shoe. Okay, so it's kind of it kind of not a lot of middle ground. It kind of looking at the shoemakers going doubling down in one direction or going in the other direction. The real answer is somewhere in the middle there. I mean, there it we all shouldn't be walking around in thinnest shoes. We can't handle it. And we all shouldn't be walking barefooted we until we can handle it. But at the same time, that pillow thing, that cushy, or those coffins, putting your feet in coffins, it's not the best idea.
Yeah, it's funny the feet call them the foundation for human movement, but what you just described is kind of a micro example of broader societal issues we got.
Oh yeah.
Everybody we got Ozempic and we got McDonald's, you know what I'm saying? Like
We be in the middle, man.
no,
We we
no,
we pick it.
yeah.
Yeah. And
So
it's a lot. It's yeah, we're picking team Z and team A.
yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of how it is right now.
Yeah. So you talked about being in the middle. Say we can't go farm all day every day and
Hmm.
reap the benefits of these great things that we know come with doing that.
Yeah.
So what does a layout of a day look like? Like, I know you call it movement snacking, but what would a day of movement snacking look like?
Well, I mean, quite often it depends on what the person has at their availability. But one thing I would say is a great routine in the morning would be to get the front load some water, get some water into your system. You drink when you get up, get sunlight, get it into your face, into your eyes as soon as possible. That'll kind of set your clock. So, that sunlight will reset your clock and kind of put you on pace. And obviously, the sun, not only the vitamin D portion of it, but it's just healthy for us. And it's not like you have to go out there and lay in it and get all sorts of stuff on your skin, but it is great to experience it in the morning, get the light going, get your clock going, wind everything up and get you started. Some people, so I would definitely say the water and the light, water and sunlight. If you can't do anything else, try to get those two things in upon waking if possible. Now, of course, sometimes we wake and it's still dark. It just depends on what time you have to get up. But whenever you can get out and get the light and that natural light, get it and try to get it on a regular basis, whether it's 5, 10, 15 minutes. That's a great way to start things out. Now, if you talk about movement snacking, so for instance, you got a job where you're going to sit 8 hours. Okay. Clearly, that's what a lot of people have to do. Regularly get a routine where you get up and do some really basic movements, whether it's some shoulder movements, rolling around, moving the neck, some mobilizations. One thing for sure is some kind of stretches for the hip flexors. If you're going to sit down 2 hours or without getting up, you're just asking for trouble. So maybe every hour or so, get up, stretch your quads out a little bit, stretch your hip flexors out a bit, take your heel, pull it to your butt, hold it there for half a minute or a minute or so. Anything like that. If you can take short walks, it doesn't have to be a crazy athletic endeavor, but the body does want to move and it wants to move regularly. So you don't always have to think, oh, wow, I don't have an hour to do this, or I don't have an hour and a half to get to the gym and dress. And yeah, there's a lot of movement that you can do if you just build it into your day.
Yeah. And also just like for athletes and basketball players, because that's who you work with primarily,
Yeah.
what would a day of movement snacking to prevent ankle sprains, which is the number one injury in the NBA this season
Yeah.
for them?
Well, it's not
What would
only
you?
this season, it's going to be every season.
Yeah.
Because here's one thing. I mean, it's hard, especially at the top level. It's hard. Your movements are dynamic. You're jumping, you're landing. So a lot of it you're not going to avoid. You're not going to be able to avoid. However, we just talked about working with the feet. Strong, mobile feet. Ankles, there are certain movements you can do that really help you largely bulletproof your ankles and your lower legs. Be aware of those, make them a priority, and they don't have to be done during a workout time. This is something that you can do anytime during the day. You can break it up into a couple workouts a day, but just know everyone wants to do plyos and they want to jump better and they want to do this and they want to get shots up and they want to work on their, the crossover. But, you know, the main thing is being able to be healthy enough to be out there to avoid ankle and foot injuries as much as possible. And a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of it has to do with the awareness of having a nice, strong, big toe that's mobile, having feet that are strong, ankles that, if you turn it, so what? It's strong, it's mobile, and you can shake off a lot of injuries. You can't necessarily avoid all injuries, but if you really take a look at the landscape, there are some guys who are really getting a lot of lower ankle and foot issues. Some guys seem to avoid them quite a bit. Now, there's a genetic component to everything, but there's also the skills. And then one of the skills says that the things that you give attention to, if you give it attention to, and if that attention is smart and also progressive, there's no way you can't improve it. It's just the way it is. You can make it better, and you can improve it to the point. If it's a liability, you can make it to an asset for sure.
Hmm. Yeah. And it seems like what you're talking about has a lot to do with movement quality, like quality of movement, because in an NBA season or any season, any level, you're loading your skeleton at such a high rate all throughout the year to where you really don't need more quantity, but if you can piece in that quality, it can really pay dividends because you need to recover.
Yeah. So yeah, recover. That's huge. The other thing is, it's not just. I mean, you know, obviously there's a nutritional component, there's a recovery component, and this is being more and more talked about and more practiced and done. But it's something that the sooner, when you're on the lower levels and you're not quite to a level where someone is actually paying you well to do an activity, or giving you a scholarship or letting you in school or whatever, that's when you're responsible for your own body and your own preservation out there. So part of that would be becoming informed and not just spending all your time, you know, putting out, but some of the time putting it in and recovering and making sure your movement is good, and you know keeping your junk foods down and staying hydrated, and also something we talked about, playing other sports or doing other activities to kind of deload some of the things that you may just chronically constantly be doing. You want to kind of do all of those things to help your body be able to recover better and move better long term. Think of things a little more long term than so short term. Sometimes think I want to do this for a while, and so you just get a little bit smarter about your practices.
Yeah, and also just playing the same sport there's a mental aspect that really stacks up. So sometimes playing a different sport can kind of empty that cup a little bit
Oh,
and
without a doubt. So
yeah,
not only that, yeah,
reset.
for sure, and it also gives you different ways of looking at things. I've seen some stuff that you were doing that a lot of, yeah, football players wanting to move like basketball players,
Yeah.
and just and it's helpful to what they do, but what it really is, it's a fresh look at, okay, my body wants something, and it's innovative, and it's different, but it has a carryover.
Hmm.
And so anytime you can cross something in and figure out, I can make this help me, that's just an added bonus if it can help you. at what it is, whatever it is, the sport that you're doing.
Are you talking about that video of Amon Ra working on between the legs, like he was doing the route and doing with the
Yeah.
basketball? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what's interesting is those knee and shin angles are the same.
Oh, they're the same. Yeah.
Yeah.
Without, and they're also without, they're novel. So your body just does it without thinking about it. And, it's kind of goofy and it's kind of fun and it's a change and it's just a really good, well, it's good, some pretty good coaching there. I think there's a few people who kind of get it.
Hmm.
And, you might see them on Instagram, but might not,
Yeah.
or wherever, you're looking. But it's just cool when you see stuff like that and you go, all right, I like it. Sometimes
Mhm.
you see stuff that's novel and you're going, huh, why? but it takes a little bit of thought to figure out why you're doing something.
Hmm. Yeah, and we've talked about play a lot, but play in that sense can really help a pro if he's plateauing, really. It can help him kind of reset and acquire skills extremely fast compared to just doing
For sure.
monotony.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it really is a superpower.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I was thinking about whenever I think about this, I think about a guy I went to a class. This was a number of years ago, and this real strong dude was doing these demonstrations. And during this demonstration, this guy like took this nail and he would bend this nail, right? He was strong.
mhm,
And he had this big nail and he passed it around everybody in the class. We all tried to bend it and most of it, we couldn't bend it, but he sit there and bent this nail. Now, meanwhile, I was taking this class. It was a fitness related class, some exercise related class. I was hanging out with this Australian dude who really wasn't a trainer. He was a farmer and he was trying to get into the business of training, right? And so he's taking this class and he and I are joking and he grabs the nail and he bends it. And the guy kind of got a little like, what are you bending the nail for? You're not supposed, no one's supposed to be able to bend the nail.
mhm.
And then he says, oh, so you do nail bending, huh? And he goes, oh, no, no, no. This is the first time I mean a nail. I mean, I don't bend them, I use them. He says, well, geez, okay. So he goes to his car. He gets like two more nails, thicker. And he comes in and he says, bends this other one. He goes, there. Let me see you bend one this size. And the guy goes, oh, okay. He bends it. And finally, this guy comes out with this thicker nail and he's sitting there and he's working with it. And he's doing this whole deal and he bends this nail and he hands it to the guy. And the guy goes, yeah, I can't bend it. And then the guy goes, yeah, right. And he leaves and he says, hey, and I'm talking to the guy. He says, I've never bent a nail in my life, but I work on a farm. And he says, I could have bent that last nail, but man, we're wasting valuable class time with this stupid nail bending stuff.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, earlier we were talking about just farming and working and how people work certain ways. And this is a dude who was super strong just from working his fields all the time and, not doing weight room stuff and not doing strongman demonstrations and nail
Yeah.
bending, but he was able to do it. Yeah, he wasn't a big guy either. He's, pretty average sized guy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So this episode was really revolving about around movement.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we provided some insight as to how people can incorporate different um, strategies to ensure that they're moving well and healthy throughout their day, their work day. But I want to take a trip to the elite side of the movement spectrum, and I want to ask you who your top three movers of all time are. And it doesn't have to be three, but if you have three in mind, I'd love to hear.
Okay, let me just say this. It's not possible that I can narrow it down because I'm going to say something. I can go on Instagram today and see three dudes who can move better than anybody I've ever seen. I can just search on there.
Yeah.
I can go to circulate. I saw a lady with her leg extended straight up in the air with a hula hoop on her ankle. So those are tricks, but those are incredible.
Yeah.
When I think of athletes, I mean, there's so many people that come to mind, but I'm gonna just say that Barry Sanders is a phenom. I mean, like next level alien type movement ability. Um, Definitely stands out just to a really high level. Guys my age are all big Bruce Lee fans. I am included there. And I mean, I don't know if he really could, I don't know how he could really fight. I'm pretty sure he was okay. But I loved watching him move, man. It's just he got me fired up for thinking about this. Um Currently, you know what? If there's an NBA player I think of, and I don't think he's that famous. I don't even think he's a all-star type player, but there's a guy named Josh Hart. I think he's with the Knicks now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've just watched him do a few things that I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah, he's a pretty unique, really combination of strength and mobility, and he plays big, and so he believe it or not, there's a lot of guys doing a lot of fancy stuff, Kyrie and Ja and people like that, but for some reason I look at a guy and I say Josh Hart kind of stands out to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And also just his defensive tenacity and spirit. I saw him, I don't know if he was on the Lakers at this time, but he sprinted for a loose ball. He managed to brace himself in a single leg pistol
It was
and and then he threw it back in bounds.
He
And he t
was never at any time under any duress. That was just like, oh, I, he, I can do this, and
yeah.
there's the ball. Crazy,
Yeah. Yeah.
crazy, man. Yeah.
But you also like that also makes me think of play and the
Mhm.
exploring that takes place
Mhm.
during play, as
Yeah.
opposed to maybe doing a certain sets and reps and learning technique in a gym. It's a different mode of expression, movement
Mhm.
expression.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that just also adds to what we said about the importance of play, especially for young kids.
Another thing to do that I've done as directed through the things I've learned over the years is to actually um, look at what the really good movers are doing, really look at it and break it down in its smallest bites, talk about bites, and actually grasp and learn those type of movements. And almost anything you can reverse engineer if you look at it long enough and you study it enough. And so, you know, reverse engineering really good athletic movement, the best people in the field, either instinctively or through a system, know how to do it. And more importantly, know how to teach it. And that's what I try to do as much as possible.
Yeah. So when you have someone, is that something you do on a client to client basis, or is that something you do when you're studying? When you're studying, and how do you choose who to study?
Well, the choosing is easy
Yeah.
because you know who the best guys are. You just turn on TV. They're the ones getting paid, plain and simple. So the paid guys, look at them. they're all going to be different. Everybody's individual style is different, but there are going to be a lot of similarities. And so I talk about that Josh Hart thing. Obviously, a lot of one leg strength, a lot of hip and knee, not only strength and mobility in one. And when I say mobility, I really mean motor control, the ability to just to control your body. There's certain positions that athletes of in various sports end up in. You want to be able to isometrically own those positions. You want to be able to slowly get in and out of those positions. You want to be able to, at a medium speed, get in and out of those positions. And then you want to be able to quickly get in and out of those positions. And a lot of that has to do with your brain and body's ability to go there and progressively figure out how to get there in a way that's not dangerous. And so, so much, I talk about a lot of times, so much of this stuff is just mitigating threats and knowing how to manage threats and how to lower threats as you go. So really, really what look like complicated positions, you can slowly learn how to move certain ways and how to get. If there's a movement that I need to do and I can't do it, well, guess what? Maybe I can hold on to something and get that help holding that position, get my body used to being there, then stop holding on. And then just isometrically hold it without holding on. And then maybe have somebody apply a little pressure to me. And then maybe little by little start moving in and out of that position slowly, medium, and then maybe at this point, quickly getting in and out of that position. So progression is is the key on a lot of this stuff, is knowing, just figuring out how to get in and out of stuff progressively, and how to design a program, some type of template that identifies the movements and the positions and the strengths that you need, and then just breaking down enough to know how to teach these things on a person by person basis so that they can get better at what it is they do, and they can also do it with a lot less of a chance of being injured.
So you talked about the biomechanics, you talked a little bit about the neural component.
Mhm.
Um, but when really building and layering a skill like that, you talked about getting into a position and getting out of it. Could you put that into the movement snacking model and and effectively, is that the most effective way to build the skill, would you say?
Well, the most effective way is whatever it is the most effective way.
Hmm.
There's somebody you can just say do this, and they just do it, and guess what? They
Yeah.
done it. That's the most effective. Just tell them. But one thing about movement snacking, and some people call it, I've heard it called short focus sessions, and I've heard it called greasing the groove. But if you want to give your brain a priority and tell it that something is very important, then that's something that you want to do on a repeated basis. So imagine if I wanted to be able to really move my ankle a certain way to do, a basketball move, some type of crossover or what have you. Maybe I want to periodically throughout the day just keep working through that movement. I could sit and do it 2,000 times without a break. That's probably not going to turn out well. But maybe I can do it 100 times a day, or, in sets of 10, another set of 10, pretty relaxed, pretty casual, just doing it. Over time, I get to my 2,000 pretty fast with less damage. And the brain has really said, this is really important to this dude. So let's figure out what we got to do to get better at this. So for in a lot of ways, that is a very good way to own certain skills and to get better at certain pieces of activities.
You talked a little bit about people at the top of the field being able to reverse engineer movements. Um, but what are some other characteristics of elite coaches in your eyes that
Communi-
that defines an elite coach? Like some
communi-
traits.
Communication. I mean, it's great to know how to take a look at an athlete and what he needs, but it's another thing to um to get it to where you can teach it. I mean, you could get five people and they learn best five different ways. If you're a one-on-one coach, you need the five different ways. If you have a group, you have to figure out how to address the group best. It may not be the prime way of teaching something for one or two members of the group. It may not, but what is a way that you can do it where everybody can get what they need? And so, really, I think an elite coach is a fantastic communicator and knows, first and foremost, that everybody's not going to look the same doing similar stuff, that, the way that you move and that what you have available to you is not going to be the same. Maybe I can get one guy to push a certain way. Another guy may not have that range of motion at his disposal, but he still needs to move. How do I adapt the movement so I can make this guy do it as well? And then over time, building a building a system that actually helps him get to where he can get better at it, stronger or more mobile, or whatever that is. I think that's one of the main things. Behavior change. uh, Top of the line is, can you can you can you teach behavior change? Hey man, I need you to sleep. You need to get 2 hours more. How can you convince them? You know, Eating better. Most of the basic stuff that if you can get in a group of talented athletes, or just a group of athletes, and get them to modify their behaviors, whatever they're doing off the court or sometimes on the court, that's not in their best interest. If you can get a pretty good, um, pretty good behavior change model and pretty good cooperation there, even exercises and movements and strength work, all of that, not as important as getting people to do those things away from their activity that's going to help them be really good at it. A lot of it has to do
Awesome.
with too is just knowing. I mean, having a system of knowing the personality of the people that you're working with and how to communicate with them, the various ways that they can identify with and that resonates with them, and then will get them to do what it is they need to do for themselves.
Mhm. Yeah. Awesome. All right. I think that concludes it. I just want to say thank you for sharing that abundance of information that you have. I
Oh yeah,
think
man.
that's huge for young athletes and coaches and just people looking to get a little bit more healthy and feel
Oh yeah.
better. Just
Oh yeah.
trend in that direction. So I just
Oh
want to say thank you on behalf of all the viewers and myself because I learned a bunch. Even though I spent a ton of time with you,
yeah.
I know that I learned a lot today. So I
Cool,
just want to
man.
say thank
Cool.
you.
Oh, you're welcome. And anytime you want me to come back, I will.
Awesome. Awesome.
Okay.
Cool.